My cousin seduced every boyfriend I ever brought home for the holidays, so one Thanksgiving, I brought an ex-convict and watched her entire world begin to fall apart. Vanessa's hand was on Michael's chest before the turkey had even been cleared from the table. I watched from 6 feet away, holding a bowl of green beans. My mother was pouring wine. My grandmother was talking about her hip replacement. And my cousin, dressed for a nightclub instead of a family dinner, was using the same move she had used on every man I had ever brought home. But this time, something was different. Michael didn't smile. He didn't lean closer. He said something too quiet for me to hear, stepped away from Vanessa, and came straight back to me. "You okay?" he asked, placing his hand briefly against my back. I nodded. For the first time in 11 years, I was watching Vanessa lose. Vanessa was 2 years younger than me and had always been the star of our family. She was blonde, thin, loud, and charming whenever people were watching. My grandmother called her a showstopper before she was even old enough to drive. I was the sweet one, the smart one. Even as a child, I understood those were consolation prizes. The first time Vanessa went after one of my boyfriends, I was 23. His name was Julian. We had been dating for 4 months, and he was steady, kind, and completely ordinary. That was exactly what I liked about him. I brought him to Thanksgiving at my parents' house. Vanessa arrived 40 minutes late in a tight black dress. Before I could sit beside Julian, she took the chair next to him. Within 20 minutes, her leg was pressed against his under the table. She touched his arm whenever he spoke and laughed at every joke, including the ones that weren't funny. Later, I found them alone in the kitchen. Her hand was flat against his chest, and she was telling him that some people didn't appreciate what they had. Julian looked uncomfortable, but he wasn't walking away. I didn't confront them. I went back to the living room and pretended nothing had happened. Julian broke up with me 3 weeks later. He said he needed space. 2 months after that, I saw a photo of him and Vanessa together at a bar in Akron. When I told my mother, she said Vanessa was simply affectionate and didn't mean anything by it. My grandmother was even less sympathetic. "Maybe you should try being more feminine if you want to keep a man," she told me over Christmas pie. That was when I understood the real problem wasn't only Vanessa. It was the entire family around her. Everyone treated her behavior like bad weather, something that happened to you, not something she chose to do. Looking back, the warning signs had always been there. When Vanessa was 16, she stole a boy from her best friend, Priya. I remember Priya crying in the upstairs bathroom while Vanessa sat outside laughing with him. When Priya confronted her, Vanessa called her dramatic. "He obviously wasn't that into you if it was this easy," she said. Priya disappeared from our lives after that. Nobody in the family ever asked why. For Vanessa, it was never about love. It wasn't even about the men. She needed to win against someone close enough for the loss to hurt. After Julian, I tested that theory. I dated one man for 5 months and another for 8, but I kept both of them away from my family. Neither relationship ended because of another woman. Then I met Trevor. Trevor was a doctor, calm and intelligent, with a dry sense of humor. We dated for 7 months, and I loved him. 3 weeks before Christmas, I finally told him everything about Vanessa. He laughed, not cruelly. He simply thought I was worrying too much. "I'm a grown man," he said. "I think I can handle your cousin." I wanted to believe him. At Christmas, Vanessa spilled wine down the front of her dress and asked Trevor to help her clean it in the kitchen because, as a doctor, he would know what to do. They disappeared for 15 minutes. When they came back, Trevor's collar was damp, and Vanessa's dress was much drier than it should have been. We broke up in February. After Trevor, I stopped bringing men home. For almost 2 years, I dated in secret and spent holidays alone. It's difficult to explain the loneliness of hiding your life, not from strangers, but from your own family. During that time, I began volunteering with a prison literacy program. I was paired with Michael Reyes, a 34-year-old man finishing a 7-year sentence for burglary. Michael never made excuses for what he had done. His mother had been dying from cancer when he committed the crimes, and he had been desperate for money, but he never used that as a defense. "Plenty of people suffer and don't break the law," he wrote in his second letter. "I made a choice, and I own it." We exchanged letters for 8 months. Michael was one of the most honest people I had ever met. He never flattered me or tried to perform for me. When I mentioned Vanessa, he wrote something I never forgot. "Misery like that isn't really about the person it's aimed at. It's about what's missing in the person doing the aiming." Michael was released in October. 2 weeks later, we met for coffee. We talked for 3 hours until the staff started stacking chairs around us. We began dating soon afterward. In November, my mother begged me to come to Thanksgiving. I planned to go alone, as usual. But when I told Michael the entire story, he looked at me and said, "Take me." I warned him that Vanessa could find a person's weakness within seconds. Michael smiled. 7 years in prison taught me how to survive people far more dangerous than a woman in a cocktail dress. So I said yes. Michael arrived at my apartment in a navy shirt and gray pants. He didn't look intimidating. He didn't look like an ex-convict. He looked like any man going home to meet his girlfriend's parents. My father liked him almost immediately. Within minutes, they were discussing football. My mother welcomed him warmly, and even my grandmother managed to remain polite. Then Vanessa arrived. She scanned the room, saw Michael, and walked straight toward him. "You must be Michael." She held his hand, little too long when they shook. "How did you two meet?" she asked. "Through a prison pen pal program," Michael answered calmly. Vanessa blinked. She had expected shame, embarrassment, or a cover story. Michael gave her none of those things. During dinner, she performed for him. She told loud stories, laughed too often, and mentioned a promotion whose details changed every time she described it. Michael remained polite, but he gave his attention to everyone except her. The less he reacted, the harder she tried. At one point, Vanessa asked him to help her carry folding chairs from the garage. It was the same trick she had used with Julian and Trevor, a private task, away from everyone else. "Her dad can probably help," Michael said. "I'll stay here." Under the table, he moved slightly closer to me. Vanessa's smile tightened. Then she tried to embarrass him. Loudly, in front of everyone, she asked whether it was true that he had been in prison. The table went silent. Michael set down his fork and looked directly at her. "It is," he said. "I'm an open book about it. I'm happy to discuss it any time, although I'm a little surprised it came up at Thanksgiving instead of, say, the weather." My uncle laughed, and a few others joined him. For once, Vanessa was the person who had made the room uncomfortable. After dinner, she made one final attempt. While everyone was distracted, she cornered Michael near the drink table. I saw her lean close and place her hand flat against his chest, the exact move I had watched her use on Julian 11 years earlier. Michael stepped back. He said a few words, then returned to me. In the car, I asked what had happened. "She said you were damaged and insecure," he told me. "She said you drove away every man you dated and that I could do better." He paused. Then she gave me her number. "What did you say?" I told her I wasn't interested, and that she should work on being a decent person before she ruined anyone else's life. I cried for the rest of the drive home. Not because I was sad, because something that had been trapped inside me for 11 years was finally being released. A week later, my mother called. Vanessa had told her I had brought an ex-convict to Thanksgiving without warning anyone. She claimed she had felt unsafe all evening. For the first time, I didn't defend myself. I ended the call, muted the family group chat, and let them be angry. 3 weeks later, Vanessa's younger sister, Jessica, asked to meet me. Jessica had always been quiet. She had spent her life living in Vanessa's shadow, and I had assumed she would remain there forever. But that day, she looked terrified. She told me Vanessa had been searching for Michael online. She had found his arrest records and contacted an old girlfriend, asking whether he had ever been violent. The woman replied that Michael had never hurt her. But Vanessa wasn't finished. Jessica showed me a folder of screenshots. Vanessa was planning to file a police report claiming Michael had grabbed her wrist and threatened her during Thanksgiving. She wants him sent back to prison, Jessica whispered. Michael was still under post-release supervision. Even a false accusation could put his freedom and his job at risk. I asked Jessica why she was helping me. Her eyes filled with tears. I watched Priya cry when I was 14, she said. I watched what happened to you with Julian and Trevor. I stayed quiet because speaking up meant becoming Vanessa's next target. I'm done being quiet. I called Michael from the parking lot and told him everything. He was silent for several seconds. Then he said, I thought she might do something like this. Before Thanksgiving dinner, Michael had turned on his phone's recorder and placed it in his shirt pocket. It had captured the entire conversation by the drink table. Vanessa insulting me, offering him her number, and Michael rejecting her. 3 days later, a police officer called Michael. Vanessa had officially accused him of grabbing her wrist and threatening her. Michael voluntarily went to the station and gave a statement. Then he played the recording. Vanessa's voice was clear. She's damaged, she said. She's insecure, you could do so much better. Then she offered him her number. Michael's response was equally clear. I'm not interested. You should work on being a decent person before you ruin anyone else's life. There was no threat, no raised voice, no sound of a struggle, nothing that supported Vanessa's story. The officer listened twice, asked for a copy, and promised to contact Michael's parole officer personally. No action was taken against Michael. Vanessa received a formal warning for filing a false report. But that didn't erase the damage. For 2 weeks, Michael's employer reviewed the police contact. He had worked hard to build a stable life, and Vanessa had nearly destroyed it because he rejected her. One day, after everything was cleared, Michael admitted something he had hidden from me. For a moment in that station, he said, his voice breaking, I really thought I was going back. I held him for a long time. Then the family's silence finally broke. Jessica told my mother everything, the online searches, the messages, and the false report. My mother called me that night. I should have believed you 11 years ago, she said. About Julian, about Trevor, about all of it. I told myself it wasn't serious because that was easier than admitting what she was doing. It didn't repair the past, but it was the first honest apology I had ever received from her. My grandmother still refused to accept responsibility. She said Vanessa had always been dramatic and that families should handle problems privately. But this time, my mother did something she had never done before. At my father's birthday dinner, she confronted Vanessa in front of everyone. Did you file a police report you knew was false? She asked. Vanessa immediately claimed she had felt unsafe. My mother's hands shook, but her voice didn't. There's a recording, we've all heard it. There was no threat. There was no wrist grabbing. There was you asking a man for his attention, him saying no, and you trying to send him back to prison because of it. Vanessa looked around the table. Her father's face was hard. Jessica stared down at her plate. My grandmother, for once, said nothing in Vanessa's defense. The room would not rescue her. Vanessa stood and left before dessert. Her mother followed her. Nobody else did. That was the moment her world truly began to fall apart, not because she suddenly changed, but because the family finally saw her clearly. Months later, Vanessa came to my apartment claiming she wanted to apologize. But she spent 20 minutes talking about her difficult childhood and the pressure of always being the pretty one. She described the police report as something that had simply gotten out of hand. She never said Michael's name. She never asked whether he had kept his job or whether his parole officer had believed him. She wanted forgiveness without accountability. I told her I wasn't ready to rebuild our relationship, and I might never be. She left, and I never heard from her directly again. Jessica and I grew closer. My parents slowly learned to stop confusing silence with peace. Even Vanessa's father apologized for standing by while everyone excused her behavior. Michael and I married 18 months later in a small park ceremony with 40 guests. Vanessa wasn't invited. My mother cried through the ceremony. My father later fixed the brakes on Michael's truck without being asked, which, in my father's language, was a love letter. Michael now works in facilities management for a school district and coaches a youth basketball team on Saturdays. His supervision ended quietly with a handshake from his parole officer. We still attend some family gatherings, but only the ones where we feel safe. I finally understand that peace sometimes means choosing which rooms you are willing to enter. I don't know much about Vanessa's life anymore. I hear that relationships come and go, and that she still tells people our family became complicated. I don't feel victorious. Sometimes I remember us as children, building blanket forts and laughing until we couldn't breathe. I grieve the cousin she might have become if, even once, she had chosen honesty over winning. But grief and peace can live in the same heart. For years, I thought I needed to find a man strong enough to resist Vanessa. That was never the real solution. The real solution was refusing to sit at a table that demanded I suffer quietly, and building a new table with people who would protect the truth. Vanessa's world didn't collapse in one dramatic night. It happened slowly. A failed police report, a sister who finally spoke, a mother who stopped making excuses, and a family that no longer applauded on command. What fell apart was the illusion that she could take anything she wanted without consequences. I brought an ex-convict to Thanksgiving hopping. He could survive my cousin. Instead, he showed me that I no longer had to survive my family. Some things must be lost on purpose, because keeping them costs more than letting them go. I didn't know that at 23, standing in my parents' dining room with a bowl of green beans in my hands. But I know it now.